Hi, I'm Dr. Lyndze Harvey, and this is Teach to Resist. One of the things that I call myself, aside from a parent and an educator, is a praxis mentor. And I think that a lot of folks might not know what that means, since it's a term I kind of made up. So first I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what praxis is, and then hopefully what a praxis mentor is will become apparent. So what's praxis? And what's a praxis mentor? So praxis is about connection, and sometimes we think we're making connections when we're really not. So sometimes we have a way of doing things and we don't really think about what our thinking is around that. So we keep doing the same old thing, even if it looks slightly different. It's really aiming towards the same goal, and we haven't pulled back and really thought about what that goal is. The result, I've got this goal and I am doing something that's not connected to that goal and therefore undermining it. Maybe what I'm doing is meeting a completely separate goal that I don't have or I don't agree with. That's a disconnection or bad praxis. What I want to talk about today is praxis working out. Praxis is the idea that we are going to reflect and potentially make connections between what we think and what we do. So there are many ways that folks use praxis, and often sometimes people use the word praxis interchangeably with practice, Practice. But praxis is not practice. It is a practice. Praxis is something that you need to practice and take your time with and keep doing. It's also something that a lot of us already do, especially when we are teaching ourselves something or learning a new skill. It's not always something we pull back and give a lot of thought to. And the act of praxis involves reflection, as you can see in the slide. It also involves transformation. So praxis is this interconnected way of transforming what we are doing so that it's connected to what we are thinking or our beliefs or our goals. So our theory, as you can see there, our theory is things like beliefs and goals or our philosophy. And then our action is the thing we're doing or our methods or our practice. And then we are reflecting on the connection between theory and action. Is what I'm thinking about or believing in connection to what I'm doing? Is what I'm doing supporting my beliefs? And when I pull back and reflect on that and I see those two things connecting and supporting one another, then I have some good praxis. When I see one of those things out of balance with the other, out of touch, undermining the other, then there's a disconnection and I need to make a change. I need to let go of this same old thinking, same old results, and really open myself up to transformation. This is challenging work. This is vulnerable. And that's why sometimes we need a mentor to help us ask those difficult questions. It's vulnerable and it can cause us to have what's sometimes called the backfire effect. It's also a response that we have in our brains. And if you've watched my videos on self-regulation, you might be familiar with this term. But we have a limbic reaction. So the part of our brain that's looking for threats is going to see a new concept or a new idea that maybe conflicts with our worldview as a threat. And we then shut down, we don't want to hear about it, we feel vulnerability, and we push away that new idea or new concept because it doesn't feel comfortable. Praxis is uncomfortable. Praxis is noticing that feeling of vulnerability and knowing that there's an opportunity for transformation just around the corner. Sometimes we need a mentor to help guide us through that, other times we don't. So praxis is really partly thinking about our thinking. And I love this quotation because I think it really explains praxis in a way that connects it to the vulnerability and to this idea of transformation. It says, to think is easy, to act is hard, but the hardest thing in the world is to act in accordance with your thinking. That is a much harder thing than we think. And I'm going to tell you a story to show you my challenge with Praxis. So I used to work for an outdoor center, and I would manage a wonderful staff team and communicate with teachers and parents and help organize the kids. And I'd be training the staff as well on how to run programs such as canoeing, archery, team building, and rock climbing. And one summer I thought, I'm really nailing it when it comes to praise. I'm chasing down staff to tell them how wonderful they are. I'm really motivating them to do well in this program. I even had a poster, 99 ways to say good job. And then I came across this article by an author, Alfie Kohn, Kohn. You can find his work at alfiecohen.org. And he writes this article called 5 Reasons to Stop Saying Good Job. So I came across this article and I started reading it, and I felt pretty threatened by it. But I ended up giving it out to the staff and seeing what they thought. And here is part of what the article talks about and where my staff team and I went with it. So when we think about good job, we think we are doing things like building self-esteem. We're encouraging the kids. We're making them feel good. We're reaching them out and telling them that they are doing well and that we like what they're doing. Good job can be said in many different ways. I like the way you said please, or even thank you could be used in a way that echoes the intention of good job, praise. We think of the words positive reinforcement. I'm going to come back to that in a moment, but we think that, this is much better than the alternative, which is negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement feels a bit icky. Positive reinforcement feels like something that we can get behind. And we think that it's connection. It's a moment where I'm speaking with the other person. I'm saying to the child in my life, I see you, I see what you've done, and I'm connecting with you on what you've done. I'm reminded of being in a playground and a child going down the slide and saying, look, mommy, I'm going down the slide. And then mommy responding, good job, good sliding. So that's another way of saying, I acknowledge you in this positive way that we think is building self-esteem. Alfie Kohn turns some of this on its head. He says, this isn't really promoting the unconditional love that we think it's promoting. In fact, there's a conditional element to it. You are doing a good job because I've noticed you and I acknowledge what you've done and I condone what you've done. And there's something a bit problematic about that. It's manipulation for compliance. When I say good job to somebody and another child is not being good jobbed, they might sit up a little bit straighter and try to get noticed and get that carrot rather than the stick of not having it. For example, many children are getting ready for our circle time, and I notice Sarah is sitting up nice and tall. I say, oh, look at Sarah. She's sitting up nice and tall. Good job, Sarah. But little Samuel, who overhears this and didn't get noticed for his sitting so well and being ready for circle time, maybe feels a little bit bad that he can get noticed. And meanwhile, little Samantha over there, who was not sitting, might feel like she needs to sit up tall and get the attention of the teacher because she really wants that positive reinforcement. It's just like what positive reinforcement was originally invented to describe the behavior of rats who are trying to finish a maze. Psychologists use this term, positive reinforcement, to describe how to get the rats to do what they wanted them to do by giving them food or other incentives rather than an electric shock being a negative reinforcement. It's kind of strange that we've used that term to describe what we do with children. Children are not rats, clearly. So there's some manipulation for compliance, trying to get kids to do what we want them to do. And it isn't as connection-based as we think. And I'm going to finish the story of working at the summer camp and my staff all giving this a go. We spent a week trying out not saying good job, trying other things other than praise when we were communicating with kids. And we had a meeting about partway through the week to express how it was going for us, to see if we wanted to continue with this experiment. And most folks were a bit confused. They didn't really know what to say instead of good job, so there were some struggles with that. But then one of the youngest staff members, just 17 years old, said, I think that good job was a conversation stopper. And I said, what do you mean good job is a conversation stopper? And she said, well, when I have the kids climbing up the rock wall, they'll go up the wall and down the wall, and I'll unhook their carabiner, unhook the rope that I'm belaying them with, and I'll say, good job. But this week, instead of saying good job, I was saying things like, how was that for you? Tell me about what happened on that wall. You seem tired. Was that frightening for you? And the children would interact with her and tell her their story of what it was like going up that rock wall. They would say, I got partway up and my knees felt like jelly, but I looked down and I tested the rope and I knew you had me, and so I tried to climb all the way to the top. Didn't quite make it, maybe next time. And she would hear that story that she'd never really heard before. There were all these conversations happening and all of these connections happening. And whether they climbed to the top of the wall or only got partway up the wall, they were getting that recognition, that true recognition for what they did. It wasn't positive reinforcement. It was, I really see you and I'm really hearing you. When she said good job and sent them back to sit down, it was like their experience wasn't part of her story. There was a separation. So I love that idea that good job is a conversation stopper, and that really caused me to engage in Praxis, to sit back and think, I want to connect with kids. That's a goal of mine. I really want children to feel seen, and I want my love with them to be unconditional. I want to focus on connection more than compliance. And when I say good job, that's not meeting those goals. It's meeting a different goal. I noticed that when I said good job, it was an attempt to try to get children to do what I want them to do. And so I had to step back and rethink what I could do to align my practice with my actual goals and beliefs. Now, I'm not going to tell you what you should do in terms of replacing good job. I encourage you to read Alfie Cohen's article, 5 Reasons to Stop Saying Good Job. But what I am going to encourage you to do is consider Praxis and how you engage with it. John Dewey says there is no belief so settled as to not be exposed to further inquiry. Good job seems like something that I should really be saying, and it was so settled in my heart and in my practice. And it was completely unsettled by trying something, by thinking differently and thinking about my thinking. So Praxis is about thinking about your thinking, reflecting, and being open to that vulnerability. That vulnerability is your pathway towards change, towards transformation. New thinking can equal new results. Since then, I haven't really used good job. I have even reconsidered how I say thank you. Am I saying thank you to the child who set the table because I want to positively reinforce that behavior? That seems more in line with the goal of compliance. Am I saying thank you to genuinely express my appreciation, to connect with them, not with the expectation that they'll set the table again tomorrow? So it's not just about what we say, the words we use, our tone, or how close we are in eye distance to the child, but more it's about the mindset behind it. So Praxis is about that, making that connection to your mindset and what you do. Can I say good job and have that meet my goals? Absolutely. It's not that good job is a dirty word or dirty phrase. It's not that it will always undermine my goals. There are moments where I can express my excitement about the work that someone's done without manipulation for compliance and with connection, without the goal of positive reinforcement, and with the idea that I really genuinely see you. In Praxis, it's important to think about our questions. And these are my questions, but they might not be your questions. Everyone has different questions that they're working on. I often ask myself these questions when I'm considering Praxis, when I'm considering a moment where I feel discomfort and I notice there's a disconnection, or there might be a disconnection between what I think and what I do. So I'll ask myself, what's my long-term goal? Is my long-term goal compliance, or is my long-term goal helping kids become kinder, more open-minded, creative, critically thinking, responsible people? Is my long-term goal to help them recognize their own freedoms and the freedoms of others? And so that's a great question for me to consider my thinking and what I'm trying to do in that moment or in the long term. Who benefits? This is another question that I am influenced by Alfie Cohen. He asks cui bono, the Latin for who benefits, when considering making rules or making decrees or statements. Rules are important. They help keep us safe. But who benefits from the rule that I'm creating right now is a great question to make myself think about and reflect on. Am I considering the barriers is another question that I really find challenging, because I often think about the barriers of the children with whom I work and live and love, but I sometimes don't think of my own barriers. So am I considering the barriers, to my energy? Am I considering the barriers to the resources that I have at this time? Am I considering the emotional barriers that I have, that others have? So bringing that into my praxis is important. Am I choosing connection over compliance? I've mentioned that a few times during this video. And that is a question that I often go back to, because I was raised in a culture that is very strongly focused on compliance. And as my beginnings working with children in camp counseling and lifeguarding, to being a teacher and a preschool teacher and a teacher educator, and a parent, I definitely find myself leaning towards compliance sometimes because of my barriers, or because of the barriers of the child. So I have some tricks that I like to use that, and I'll talk about that in another video. And finally, is there dialogue? I like to think about, coming together and how it looks when I communicate with the other person and see them and hear them as another human being. And how do I dialogue about that? So that's my thoughts on Praxis. And we all have a Praxis mentor out there, and you need to find one if you want to really challenge your praxis. And so it's great to share your questions with each other, and it's great to work through those moments of discomfort and vulnerability with somebody who can non-judgmentally, non-evaluatively take you through what you're saying, your feelings, the needs and unmet needs, and a resolution that will help you work towards connecting your thinking and your doing. So thanks so much for watching this video on Praxis. I'm Lyndze Harvey, and I am a Praxis mentor. And if you've got questions or comments, you can put them below the video, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks so much.